Welcome to another episode of Untangling Web3. Today we're thrilled to have Jeff Garzik joining us on the show. Now, Jeff is a stalwart of the Bitcoin world, having been one of the earliest contributors to Bitcoin Core and one of the leading voices in the blockchain space. His commitment to open source and interoperable software is part of his DNA, and now Jeff is embarking on a bold mission to unify the world's biggest blockchains, Bitcoin and Ethereum, with his new Layer 2 project, Hemi. So today, we've invited Jeff on to discuss the need to bridge the gap between BTC and ETH with interoperable Layer 2 technologies like Hemi and how it can be made possible with solutions like his. Jeff, welcome to the show.
Hi, and thanks for having me.
No, it's a real pleasure to have you on, Jeff. We've been very, very excited about this one. How are you doing today?
Good, busy, getting ready for the Hemi main network or mainnet launch coming in about a month or so. And as an engineer, to me, it's all about preparation. So the team has been preparing, testing. We've been working on this for 2 years. So all my thoughts are on the road ahead.
Okay, that's exciting. I'm very excited to learn about the work that you're doing right now in Hemi. Let's start off with the early days, how you got into this space. It seems to be how everyone introduces themselves on this show. They're like, I got into Bitcoin back in 2017, and that's like the badge of honor to start the game. But how about you, Jeff? You're a big dog in the space. Like a lot of people will know your name. Can you tell us about your story arc and how you became such a passionate contributor to Bitcoin?
Sure. So we'll have to go back even further in time, hop in our time machine back to 2010. And that was when I got into Bitcoin. But I have to make another stop in the time machine. 10 years earlier, I was honored to be one of the Linux lieutenants working at Red Hat on the Linux operating system and the very, very core of that system, the Linux kernel, fully open source, which is germane to the story. Mm-hmm. And that was where I really cut my teeth in massive collaboration. Open source is about collaboration. It's about sharing your code as widely as possible to, as the saying goes, make all bugs shallow, make bugs visible. So another old saying, with many eyes, all bugs are shallow. That's where we really thought about, JIT or Git. That's where we thought about open source. I was there during the birth of Git back in the day. So even before Bitcoin and blockchain, Linus Torvalds was the head of Linux. And this is relevant to Satoshi. So you and your audience, bear with me a second. Linus Torvalds, the head of the Linux open source project, was overloaded. And the way open source worked in the early days when we, chipped our lessons into Slate and the dinosaurs roamed the earth. This was pre-JIT, pre-GitHub. And we emailed patches to Linus to change the Linux kernel. And one day he would get, hundreds of patches, hundreds of changes from dozens of developers. And it was just far too much for one person to deal with. So he wrote all by himself, took a 2-week vacation, wrote Git. And that was the beginning of the acceleration in open source collaboration, not only in Linux where I was, but across the entire world. It was, mechanically suddenly a lot easier to make a software change, a patch, a diff, a set of patches, and package them up automatically with software securely. It had cryptographic signatures, which was a new entry into that space. And collaboration across this open source project, Linux, sped up, and the leader could scale. The leader could take more patches. The leader could examine them, pull them, not pull them, and integrate into their software working system. The same thing, fast forwarding to 2010, I found with Bitcoin. In 2010, I read a slash.org news post. That was a News for Nerds website that was very popular in those days, slash.org. And it said Bitcoin, a decentralized currency. And in July of 2010, and in my ego, I said, "Oh, posh! That's not true. It's surely just 5 servers in a Amazon cluster somewhere. This is not really decentralized. But it being open source, and that's the point, open source, you can open the hood of the car and inspect what's inside the car. And if you're an engineer, as I am, you can convince yourself, is that car a sham? Is that car really doing what it says it's going to do? And because all the source is open, the hood of the car is open, anyone with expertise could look at Bitcoin and see that it was amazing. And I
Mm.
saw that I was wrong. I saw that my skepticism was not well founded. And indeed, this was something really new and amazing.
Yeah.
This was July of 2010. This one first slash.org post brought in myself, brought in another several Bitcoin core developers, brought in Jed McCaleb, the original founder of Mt. Gox, now with Stellar, and many other Bitcoin luminaries, all from that one blog post in early July of 2010. So that was how I first heard about Bitcoin, and translating the Linux skills and the Linux experience, I immediately dove in. I made a patch, a software change, and sent that change to Satoshi Nakamoto, who was still there, still the leader, still hacking. It was just Satoshi and one other gentleman, Gavin Andreessen,
Mm.
his number two, who were contributing to the code at that point. And then there were scattered other code contributions, but those were the two primary code contributors. And knowing open source, knowing the open source process, I immediately jumped in. My very first patch was also memorable. I sent a patch that upgraded upgraded Bitcoin from 7 transactions per second to 4,000, which
Wow.
was the
Wow.
PayPal limit. This was changing the Bitcoin block size, which would prove to be over the years very controversial. Because this breaks consensus and all number of other issues that your listeners might not be familiar with. It disrupts the system.
Yeah.
And so my patch was rejected, rightly so. But to me, that's the beauty of open source. Is even though I was wrong, and I admit I was
Mm.
wrong, and my patch was rejected, it creates a cycle of feedback, a cycle of improvement. So I came back with another patch, which made more sense, and
Mm.
Satoshi integrated that patch into Bitcoin in late July of 2010, and that got the ball rolling. I was very familiar with open source engineering, sending changes to the project leader, getting them to review, getting him to commit, and then publish that software. And that was really my entree into Bitcoin, was using that Linux experience, that Linux knowledge on Bitcoin, which was a much smaller project, far fewer developers, far less code.
Mm.
But the same problems and meta problems existed. Satoshi, just one person, I won't say guy or girl because I don't know, was, didn't scale. And so you could get a certain number of patches through to Satoshi, a certain number of software changes, and he or she would approve them. But there was a certain pace, and above that certain pace, you kind of had to chill out and wait for
Mm.
Satoshi to reappear the next day or the next 2 days. But it
Mhm.
was very familiar experience, and they presumably saw that I had Linux experience and was already pretty well known in 2010 in open source circles. And so I quickly became the number 3 most prolific contributor to Bitcoin Core in the early days.
Wow.
Just
Wow.
hacking on what I thought would make the experience better. I'm kind of a jack of all trades. So whether it's networking or storage or mining, I contributed in various groups. But it's really akin to diving into the deep end of a swimming pool,
Mm.
in that there's no gentle introduction. If you show up with a patch that's wrong, they're going to tell you it's wrong. There's no hand holding. And that's what I love about open source, and that feedback cycle of, okay, it's not personal. We're critiquing your code. We're critiquing your code change. And most importantly, if you take our feedback and you come back with a revised patch, we'll probably take it. And that's the beauty of open source is anyone can, with a good idea, with a good change, can drive up and contribute. There's no licensing, there's no CV checks or anything like that. It's all merit. It's all about you and your code contributions and how do they contribute to Bitcoin.
Wow. Well, thanks for that intro, Jeff. I mean, you've definitely got the award for the earliest Bitcoin adopter we've had on the show, so congratulations. And I can definitely see the link. I mean, even just being part of Git, the early days of Git, that is incredible. I mean, that's something that everyone has, like, well, most people who listen to this podcast have a tangible use with hundreds of millions of users using Git today. Like, that is so cool. So we're talking about, Bitcoin, the early days, and one of the things you said that you're a bit of a generalist, and obviously that's something that's really interesting and fascinating about Bitcoin is it brings so many different topics together, economics or tokenomics as described now, security, cryptography, all these types of things, which is like it's such this beautiful coalescence of so many different things. But you talked about the early days. Could you bring us, fast forward us to present day? What in your mind is the current state of Bitcoin? Now, where do you think it's at? How much has it changed? What's it actually serving us as right now?
Sure. Well, that's the $50 billion question, I think, is where to start. Bitcoin is the root of the crypto tree, as I call it. It's the most bomb proof. It's the most, if we're voting in high school, it's the most likely to succeed, or at least the most likely to not go away in 10 or 20 years. It's absolutely established itself. In the early days, we didn't know that Bitcoin would succeed. We didn't know if it would be outlawed by all nations of the world. There was some question in the United States, was it violating the Stamp Act, some obscure US law? All of that was unknown. And so fast forwarding to today, we have incredible regulatory clarity, both in the United States, the EU, and many other nations around the world. And so there's it's either clearly legal or at least you're not going to get arrested for using Bitcoin. For example, in China and Russia, it's and a couple other smaller countries, Bitcoin is technically illegal by virtue of the fact that only the national currency is legal and everything else is therefore illegal. But that doesn't stop people in China and Russia from using Bitcoin, Ethereum, the other cryptos. And so there's kind of a de facto legality in some of the authoritarian countries as well. So that's changed quite a bit. There are a number of developers who are very well versed in Bitcoin and the other cryptos. So the developer community is far more educated. They know exactly how blockchain protocols can work and break. And as an engineer, you want to know the engineering limits of your bridge. You want to know the engineering limits of your road. You want to know the engineering limits of your blockchain technology. And it's pretty well studied at this point. Stanford University has blockchain classes, as do many other universities. And so a lot of the early unknown unknowns are now known. And that's fantastic. And there's a lot of, I would say, crypto interest outside of sort of where it began, which was the nerds, the libertarians, the crypto anarchists, the early activists, and into first Bitcoin maximalism, which was several years ago. And now we argue with Hemi, especially our project, we see a lot of Bitcoin moderates and Bitcoin pragmatists these days, is that they see the value of Bitcoin 13, 14 years later. They see the strength. They see it's not going away. But at the same time, it's, if Bitcoin is the king of crypto, Ethereum is the queen of crypto, and they see a lot of developer activity in Ethereum, which is additive, meaning that if only I had feature X on Bitcoin, or specifically more programmability on Bitcoin, it would be so much better to write applications for this system. That's admittedly a very developer view, but we saw developers over the years migrate from initially Bitcoin and the Bitcoin clones like Litecoin to the Ethereum community because it was far easier to program. And this 2014 to 2017 timeframe created one of the first token crypto cycles, the ICO cycle in 2017, where everyone and their brother and their mother were creating tokens on Ethereum, and hopefully raising VC money to go along with that. That was the first of many cycles. Well, I'd say the second cycle in crypto with a wave of tokens. And, again, going through the time machine, I think that Bitcoin has always been the rock that is not changing very much, but that's also a challenge, is that it's very secure, but it doesn't change very much. And so how to innovate? In the early days, we always told ourselves, oh, well, people externally will innovate on Ethereum or Solana or pick your other blockchain. And then once it's proven, that was kind of the beta test, and we'll bring it back to Bitcoin. That was always the logic. And whether that bears out, I think it does some. But Bitcoin today is super secure, but ossified. It doesn't change very much at all, and we shouldn't expect it to change very much at all. And again, that has its virtues as well. It is very secure. You can trust your digital assets to this network, least likely to go away or have an engineering fault. So it's like the bank vault that's got 10-foot thick walls.
Yeah.
And Ethereum, I would say, is the grand central station of crypto. If you're moving assets, you're going to move digital assets probably through Ethereum or an Ethereum compatible network, even if you're going to Bitcoin. Ethereum has much more capable smart contract technology, which allows, it's tough to kind of parse this for a non-technical audience, but it has self-sovereign contract addresses, which Bitcoin doesn't have. And this means that contracts themselves can hold digital asset balances and can act autonomously. And in turn, this allows programmers like myself to build far more capable systems, far more expansive systems. And so that's really a little bit of the compare and contrast. Ethereum started in, scratching my memory, 2013, 2014, somewhere in that time frame. And again, that really stole a lot of developers from the earlier blockchains, because you could do so much more. But now we're completing that arc. We're completing that horseshoe, is with what Hemi is doing. And I will describe that in a bit. But more generally, what the ecosystem is doing is recognizing that they both have their virtues. There's absolutely tons of value in the BTC token and wrapping the BTC token, connecting the BTC token to other networks, and also doing other things, runes, ordinals, inscriptions on the Bitcoin chain itself. Those are specific token and NFT type technologies. But it's all moving in one direction. And I wrote this in a paper in 2017, is a settlement layer for crypto. Is fundamentally, if you think about blockchains as a 2-lane road, or maybe a 4-lane road, what happens when that road gets full? The way blockchain networks work today is the network fees increase. It's called congestion pricing, and some of us might literally have congestion pricing on our highways today. Blockchains have congestion pricing as well.
Yeah.
And it's fundamentally an auction for block space, which is finite and limited resource. And when the road is busy, when the blockchain is busy, those fees go up. And when the road is not busy, when the blockchain is not busy, those fees go down. But
Yeah.
fundamentally, you can't put all the cars in the world on one road. You can't put all the coffees on a single blockchain, no matter how much Starbucks would love to blockchain. That would lead to a suboptimal user experience. But again, the root of the crypto tree, Bitcoin, incredibly secure. Ethereum, the queen of crypto, Grand Central Station for digital assets. The way this all comes together is that you build a road connecting the two. These are called layer 2 blockchains, or L2. And your additional road, like, and I'll bring in another analogy, like the champagne waterfall that you see at hotels and wedding receptions. The blockchain at the top is that layer 1 blockchain, and traffic spills over into that next layer of champagne glasses, that next layer of secondary blockchains.
Yeah.
And as that traffic increases, those secondary blockchains can handle more of that load. And fundamentally, it's all, again, connected back to Bitcoin and Ethereum, the king and queen of crypto. And so with that kind of picture painted, that's where we get Hemi, the project and product that we're building, uniting the king and queen of crypto, is a highway between the two that's faster, lower fees, and has a lot of interesting features that bring both together.
Yeah, that's a really great summary of the state of play, and thanks for that, Jeff, especially to get it from someone like yourself. I think it resonates with me, describing Bitcoin as this ultra secure settlement layer that doesn't change. I like the word ossified very much, because I think people would generally say Bitcoin is where a lot less of the innovation is happening, and it's happening elsewhere, or has been for the last few years, on Ethereum and similar kind of platforms. And something like ordinals comes along to Bitcoin as a tokenization protocol, and everyone loses their minds all of a sudden. Like, it's not that interesting in my mind, but because it was happening on Bitcoin, people kind of got much more excited about it. And now, yeah, I completely see the need, because I was going to say one of the big trends we've been seeing, and you hinted at it there, is with people trying to build virtual machines that are compatible with Bitcoin, right? To get those Ethereum-like functionalities. Things like Blockstack have been trying this for a number of years, and that's another interesting approach. But obviously, you're doing something now in that space, or something maybe even with a grander vision. So why don't we move on to Hemi then? You've set the scene really nicely, but could you just kind of give us the elevator pitch on what exactly is Hemi, and how does this mission kind of differ perhaps from what we've seen with other L2s in the past? Like, is the focus purely on Bitcoin and Ethereum, and kind of what's the thinking there?
Sure. The tagline that I've come up with, our marketing people might disagree, but it's the network for what comes next. I'm a chess player, and I don't claim to be a grandmaster or anything, but I like to think that Hemi is 5 or 10 chess moves ahead. So what does that mean? What is a modular network uniting the king and queen of crypto, Bitcoin and Ethereum, mean? Fundamentally, and this gets a little bit technical, there are other competing layer 2s that, similarly, using the analogy, they're building their own roads that also connect to Bitcoin or connect to Ethereum. We're connecting to both, but beyond that, going back in computing history, where the acronym EVM comes from, Ethereum Virtual Machine, is a takeoff on a programming language, Java, and the Java Virtual Machine, or JVM. And it's an echo of that. And in computing history, Java was write once, run anywhere. That was their tagline. And it's the same in blockchain today. Is the Ethereum Virtual Machine has become the kind of lingua franca for smart contracts across a large number of blockchains, with Solana being just about the only notable exception. They have their own smart contract language called Move. But this Ethereum virtual machine has been tested by what I call the Darwinian trial by fire. Back in the Linux days, if you'd ask Linus Torvalds, where's the best test lab in the world for testing my software? He would look out the window and say, the internet, the real world, because the real world is the best test lab in the world. And we've had real world testing of the Ethereum virtual machine since 2014, almost 10 years. It's very battle tested and very, it's unknown unknowns are now known. And as a result, a number of projects are forking that and creating their own L2, usually through a project called Optimism, which makes it very easy to create your own layer 2 EVM compatible blockchain. Those only connect to Ethereum itself. They don't natively talk to Bitcoin. So it's very easy to photocopy Optimism and get your own L2 in this space. But and talk about the Hemi team for a second. The Hemi team has been building on Bitcoin and Ethereum for well over a decade. We have a deep bench, a deep team. Most of the other projects teams are one or two people that are technical, and they fork some code, but they don't know how to handle things when something goes wrong. And so we have a deep team on Hemi, and we support Ethereum, but that was the step zero almost of our technology.
Yeah.
We took the EVM and then we added Bitcoin special sauce to it. Meaning that our other competitors, they have this virtual machine, and it's either Ethereum only, and you can bridge back and forth from Ethereum, and that's it, or it's Bitcoin only, and you can bridge back and forth from Bitcoin with some duct tape and suspenders, because it's a little bit less battle tested on the Bitcoin side. We call it they staple gunned the EVM to a Bitcoin anchoring solution. And so that's what we feel some of our other competition on the Bitcoin side looks like. And again, that's only connecting to one network, and it doesn't really add much for developers. So we said, what makes sense? Let's stop. Let's not join the rat race of photocopying blockchains. What makes sense for the next 10 years? And fundamentally, it's connecting to all the blockchains that matter, starting with Bitcoin and Ethereum. We added, and again, this is a little bit technical, but we modified the EVM to add Bitcoin smarts. Other smart contracts and other blockchains, they can't talk fundamentally to their underlying blockchain very easily. You have to do something called bridging. You have to bridge digital assets from point A to point B, and then you can do something interesting with them. And then you drive them over the bridge back to Ethereum or back to Bitcoin. What the Hemi HVM does, in contrast, is it allows you to look directly at the Bitcoin main chain from the EVM, from the Ethereum side, and see incoming payments, ordinals, inscriptions, runes, Bitcoin transactions, and observe activity, payments, etc. on the Bitcoin main chain. And then on the inverse, again, from the EVM, from the Solidity smart contracts, you can create new Bitcoin transactions on the Bitcoin main chain. And so there's no bridging involved there in the process that I just described. You're on this EVM, which is very Ethereum centric, and you're actively talking to the Bitcoin main chain. And so if listeners know what a Bitcoin node is and an Ethereum node, we embedded a Bitcoin node inside our Ethereum node.
Just because so if I'm like a Bitcoin native, or conversely an Ethereum native, like I still don't have, say, in my native app the ability to actually sign transactions on the other chain, right? If I have an Ethereum wallet, for example, I can't sign transactions in Bitcoin script necessarily, or sign with Bitcoin signing algorithm. So do they have to trust your Hemi as like a kind of intermediary to facilitate that signing and reading? Is that how it works?
That's a really good question. Yes or no. So the answer is both. Depending on how you program your smart contract, either the smart contract is the owner and it
Okay.
manages those keys in a over collateralized multi-sig type of system,
Got
which
you.
is moving to bit VM vaults. If y'all are familiar with that technology, or you can create a system, and this is entirely up to the developer of the smart contract, that still requires those Bitcoin signatures. And so it's really dial your own security. If you want to remain within Bitcoin multi-sig, Bitcoin multi-party type arrangements, then you can do that. If you want smart contracts to hold one or more of the keys
Mhm.
in a multi-sig, you can do that as well. So we
Mhm.
give you that power.
Got you. That makes sense.
On this topic, I think it would be really interesting to get your take generally on, that's the security profile of using, let's call them layer twos or kind of bridges, etc. Because, as someone who's involved in the very earliest days of Bitcoin and building this almost perfect settlement layer, as you say it, in my head, that's always been like, that's the gold standard. If you want the gold standard of security, etc., you try and use the main chain. And obviously, in some cases, that might be too expensive. So, can you kind of describe what is the security profile generally of moving to layer twos, and is that something we should be worried about, or is this the kind of thing that is taken care of and can be mitigated in some way by things like Hemi and how they work?
Again, the answer is yes to all of that. You
Yeah,
thought it was an A or
cool.
B question, but the answer is yes.
Okay.
Fundamentally, the as an engineer, just reasoning from first principles, the honest answer is anytime you add new gears to a machine, new aspects to a machine, you're introducing some level of risk. And so that's unavoidable. Anytime there are more moving parts, there's more risk. So that's an engineering fundamental
Hmm.
that's not going to go away. But we also think that the most of the user experience for average crypto users is going to be at the layer 2 level that settles to the layer 1 level. And
Mhm.
so it's going to be culturally, um, you're settling to the OG chain as a user. If you're going on vacation and you want to leave your crypto assets on the main chain or something like that. But primarily it's headed towards settlement layers, and it's headed towards roll ups, and it's headed towards L2s for both Ethereum and Bitcoin. And people will have less and less direct wallet to L1 interaction in general as fees go up economically. Many countries in the world are priced out of using Bitcoin at
Hmm.
all once fees are $2, $3, $4, because
Mm.
in a poor country, that's what you make in a day. That's your entire day's wages. And you're obviously priced out of using any sort of crypto, even on your flip phone that you might have, because of those layer 1 fees. And so, again, with the champagne waterfall, most people will wind up spilling over into L2s just because basic economics pushes them there. And then the chains themselves are secured at the layer 1 or L1 level. So I
Jeff,
think there's definitely added risk,
Mhm.
but fundamentally, everyone can't drive on the same 2-lane road.
That makes sense. I'd really like to get your take on. I've seen like a growing movement. I don't think it's been widely adopted by like any of the core developers on Bitcoin, about the idea that layer twos in some of the applications anyway, are pulling, like you say, traffic away from layer ones. And in some applications, we've seen that that's pulled away the transactions and sometimes the fees that go onto that layer one, and therefore also affecting the security of that layer one. What do you think of that dynamic? I even saw, I don't think, again, I think it was just some random who was just spouting this on Reddit, saying something like people that just hodl on Bitcoin should start to pay some yearly annual fee to maintain the security of Bitcoin. But how it kind of fits into that whole narrative, which I don't think is popular. I just have seen some people talking about it, that layer twos are pulling traffic and security away from layer ones, and that could be a problem if everything moves to the layer two. Where do you sit on that?
It absolutely pulls traffic from layer ones, and that's kind of the whole point.
Mm,
Is not every coffee again can be on a layer one,
yeah.
and so if you want to use crypto on a regular basis, layer one on a regular basis is expensive and not feasible. So
Mm,
that's just the pragmatic reality of the situation. And so if you're going to use crypto at all, you're probably going to be using a layer two at that point.
mhm.
And so
Okay.
it's really a binary. Either I'm a rich whale who doesn't mind paying, $20 fees to send a single Bitcoin transaction, and
Sure.
you can just eat that. Or you're kind of an average person who just wants to get stuff done. And so by necessity, it's going to be at a cheaper fee location. And
Mm.
so just the Harry Potter sorting hat of economics pushes people in one direction or another.
Sure.
And so, yes, it does pull traffic away. I don't think it pulls security away. I think you literally just can't have all the world on one blockchain. It's
Mm.
just
Yeah.
not feasible. And so, that begs the question of, okay, what is feasible? And that's
Mm.
what the world is developing right now. And so it's more of a binary picture of either in that activist example, either I'm on layer one and I'm super secure, or I'm just not using Bitcoin at all. That's
Mhm.
kind of the picture for a lot
Mm.
of people. And so the security argument doesn't get very far when it's a case of either I use this or I don't.
Mm.
If I want to
Sure.
use crypto, then I'm going to have to, compromise a little bit and use a layer two. Otherwise, I just won't be able to use it. And that's, again, the binary situation that a lot of users are presented with. So it's
Yeah.
it's a fair, thing to raise and discuss. And part of Hemi's competitive advantage, we argue, is that our tunnels, what everyone else calls bridges, are far more advanced, far more secure than our competitors. But at the end of the day, again, Champagne Waterfall, most users are going to be on L2. So we're laser focused on how do you lock down and make secure that layer two experience.
Mm.
Yeah, I've really, well, we use the term pragmatic, right? I think it's a very pragmatic approach because, yeah, as you were saying, it's one of those kind of, to some people, uncomfortable truths that people are being priced out one way or another of using the main chain. But, is there an issue with using layer twos? Well, not necessarily. It's like if it works, it works. So long as it works for people, and in general, there's not these big kind of cascading failures, and day to day transactions work. Like I can't use my cup of coffee on the main chain, but at these layer twos it works fine. So that's the key thing, right? Does it work for users? And on that point, I was curious. So is the goal of Hemi, is it geared towards any specific use cases that you're kind of catering to, or is it more a very general scaling layer almost for Bitcoin and Ethereum to talk to each other, or do you kind of have some things in mind that you're particularly targeting?
Well, it definitely starts as a generic scaling layer. I've called this on Twitter organic sharding.
Mm,
The Ethereum researchers have been talking about this technique, sharding or partitioning various parts of Ethereum into their own little independent whirlpools so that the chain can scale up. But again, with maybe I'm overusing the champagne waterfall analogy. Uh, Organically, this is already happening. We didn't wait for the Ethereum researchers. The world went ahead and started spinning up Bitcoin and Ethereum, and now Hemi style layer twos. And that's naturally the way users are evolving, and I love it. So I think that that is going to continue to play out. one of the taking a step back observations is that a lot of what we're talking about on this show today, I feel, is just going to get hidden by the wallet. It's all going to go away. Users shouldn't have to know that, like on the traditional finance, the SWIFT network, that the wire is going from here to here to here. As a former networking guy from my Linux days, I call that network routing. And you just kind of know that your money starts here and it ends up here, and you don't really have to care about the details as long as it's secure. And I think that's what the layer 2 experience is going to become. And it's going to be less about, okay, my assets are here and now I have to move them here and now I have to move them here. That's a suboptimal experience. And I think wallets are going to be upgraded such that you'll just have specific use cases, getting to your question. And the wallet will automatically make sure that your digital assets are maximally secure in the specific form that you want, whether that's, I want to earn interest on my Bitcoin, or I want to use a Ethereum lending market, DeFi, or something like that. And the wallet will take care of the layer 2 details such that the average user, don't have to know. And so I think we're from a 50,000 foot view from my putting my network hat on, I think we're in the 1970s internet era of layer 2s and crypto. The 1970s internet era, it was literally, a university connecting to another university that connected to a research institution, and you get your network packets routed from one university to another. And that's how we're ultimately speaking over the internet today. That's how we visit websites in our web browser. But our web browser, we just type in CNN.com and it brings up the news. That's the user experience. And we don't have to think, well, CNN is based in my hometown of Atlanta, and I need to route packets using my web browser. None of that detail is surfaced in web browsers to users. And that was the right answer. You just type in CNN, it goes. And so again, we're still in a little bit of a clunky, rough edge user experience era, and I think that's going to evolve. But what are the use cases? There are a ton of use cases. The first, which you mentioned, is just scaling. And we can talk to both Ethereum and Bitcoin, the king and queen of crypto. And we feel that users will be able to scale onto the Hemi chain much more easily than having to pick, I'm on an Ethereum L2, I'm on a Bitcoin L2. We can handle both with ease. Decentralized finance is a popular vertical, and that's absolutely going to be on Hemi. All the familiar finance primitive that I like to analogize as Lego blocks that you can connect together. That's going to be on Hemi as well. And the nice expansion over other competing L2s is that if you have a DeFi primitive on Ethereum or a more limited one on Bitcoin, Hemi can talk to those as well. It can speak across the bridge, which is unique versus the other L2s. There's a very strong AI vertical. We're talking with the Morpheus project, one of the more real AI projects in the space. They're decentralizing the chat GPT type experience across GPUs that are spread all over the world. So that's being decentralized, and we're looking to have that on Hemi. But overall, to me, it's the connecting experience of if you're on Bitcoin and you want to either move from Bitcoin to Bitcoin-centric EVM. A lot of developers can take advantage of that experience with Hemi, or you want to kind of punch through Hemi all the way to the Ethereum blockchain. You can be on the Bitcoin main chain, trigger something on the Bitcoin main chain. Hemi detects it through a smart contract, and it initiates something on the Ethereum main chain. So certain primitives, again, unique versus our competitors, you can be 100% on the Ethereum main chain, the Ethereum L1 or the Bitcoin L1, and perform an action such as sending a payment to an address that triggers something automatically on Hemi. And autonomous nature of Hemi and smart contracts sends the digital assets the rest of the way. So it's that's kind of getting towards our theme of uniting the king and queen of crypto. It's not about my digital assets are on this island and I'm moving them from this island to another island.
Mm.
It's really pulling together all the islands into a single unified experience. So that's why I think we're 5 or 10 chess moves ahead of where the other L2 islands are these days.
It's very cool. Like, I really want to have a play around with this and just see like how it works, like in practice. Like, one of the things I want to ask is, so there are some fundamental differences between how Ethereum works and how Bitcoin works, count versus UTXO. So like, how do you map those endpoints? Basically, if I'm on Bitcoin, I want to send, 10 transactions in parallel. I can do that because UTXO based. Whereas like on Ethereum, it has to be sequential from a single address. How do you map those kind of logics? Because there's so many of those, right? Ethereum and Bitcoin are so fundamentally different in so many ways.
Yeah, it's a good question, and unfortunately, the answer is usually drilling down into the deep technicals of how X or Y moves and breathes and stuff like that. It's I
Might need a whiteboard, maybe.
yeah, kind of do. Yeah, it's just they're kind of 1,000 answers, and they're all highly technical
Sure.
kind of thing. Fundamentally, it's an EVM based blockchain with added Bitcoin smarts, the Bitcoin node embedded into the EVM. And so it's going to behave similar to other EVMs in terms of nonces and transaction sequencing, stuff like that. But you have the Bitcoin payments being parsed as incoming smart contract transactions as well. So that's surfaced in our HVM, our EVM, as depending on when Bitcoin blocks confirm Bitcoin transactions, that's going to be the sequence that comes into the EVM. So again, the Bitcoin node is deeply embedded within that Ethereum node. It's tightly integrated. Bitcoin doesn't change in terms of sending UTXOs and the limits thereof. But as those getting confirmed into blocks, they automatically appear and populate in the HVM and are visible to smart contracts, and smart contracts can then in turn trigger other behaviors, either Ethereum or Bitcoin behaviors, based on that incoming data. That includes Lightning, that includes Ethereum state channels. All of that gets surfaced at the EVM HVM layer.
That's very cool. I was wondering how the link maybe to the other L2s like your Lightnings will happen. But yeah, I guess we're getting into real low level technical details here. And I think maybe beyond the scope of today, but maybe we'll do another episode in the future. We get really nitty gritty for anyone who wants to listen to that. So listen, Jeff, I think as we're coming kind of closer to the end now, I want to get just what your outlook is for this project and Web3 in general. So yeah, can you tell us a bit more about what current state Hemi's in, what can we expect in the future, what's on the roadmap, and then is there anything outside of what you're doing with Hemi that you're particularly excited about, like another project, another app, another use case, or anything that kind of you really think is cool and should have legs that isn't directly inside what you're doing right now?
Sure. Well, the current state of things is Hemi is in testnet mode. We're have an incentivized testnet. Folks can go to hemi.xyz and experiment with parts of the system, and there's points attached to that and stuff like that you can get incentivized to learn various parts of the Hemi system. So we're public in testnet mode. Mainnet is coming very soon in the next couple months as we record this. For me as an engineer, testing super important. Test. as I mentioned earlier in the podcast, one of Linus Torvalds sayings is the internet's the best test lab in the world. And so that's where we are right now. Super excited at how testing's going. Everything's looking great. People are participating in the new form of mining that we have, POP, or proof of proof mining, pop mining. We use one other technical detail. We use Bitcoin finality to secure our chain. And so in contrast with the other Ethereum L2s, they have a 7-day fraud proof cycle. Using Bitcoin and Bitcoin finality, we have a 2-hour cycle. So Bitcoin security is deeply embedded in multiple levels at Hemi, not just embedded the Bitcoin node inside the Ethereum node. So we're testing, going to mainnet public launch very soon. So that's kind of the state of things at Hemi. Been going surprisingly well so far, knock on wood. And I think that the launch is going to be very exciting. In terms of the broader space, again, I think that there's a plethora of L2s. I like to think of myself as Mr. Macro, very high level macroeconomic analysis. Years ago, during the ICO era, I made the observation that the cost of digital asset creation is zero, which is good from egalitarianism. That's good from a permissionless standpoint. From a supply and demand perspective, that's why we see so many tokens. And from a power law perspective, VCs, when they invest in venture capital, they assume that 90% of their investments will be utterly worthless. 5% will pay back what they invested, and the remaining 5% is where they make all their money in venture capital. And it's even more extreme thanks to the cost of digital asset creation being zero in the crypto space. Is 99% of all the tokens by volume will probably not reach traction, but that other 1% will have traction, and the remaining 1% will just be an amazing blue chip that has staying power. And I think that blockchains have a similar trajectory. Is right now as we record this, I've heard of over 80 Bitcoin L2s and like 50 or more Ethereum L2s. And the cost of blockchain creation, if you're just doing a photocopy, as our competitors, many are doing, is zero. And so macroeconomically, you're going to see a ton of blockchains. Most of those will not have staying power, but some will. Obviously, I'm biased. I think Hemi will be one of the rare few. But macroeconomically, that's the phase that crypto is going through right now, is the explosion of L2s phase, which I love innovation. I love open networks, open source, permissionless innovation. Anybody, regardless of their background, whether you're a poor African kid, a poor European, a poor American, there's no licensing, there's no entry fee to development. You just need a laptop or a tablet, and you can start developing on these networks. And if you develop great technology, I'm convinced you'll see great success. And so that's what I love about openness, open networks, open source in general. And we're going through that right now. It's very merit-based. So, but again, as I referenced earlier in the show, I think that the user experience still needs a big upgrade. And I think that that's going to be the next phase of what we see is smart wallets, cross-chain, multi-chain wallets. They'll start to bring these DeFi primitives, NFTs, other use cases, real-world assets into a unified experience where you kind of think less about, oh, my digital assets parked in this chain and this other one's parked in this chain, and more about what the user needs to frickin' get done at the end of the day. Because to me, it's I love talking tech, and I love blockchain tech. but it's all about the users at the end of the day. If you're not doing something productive for humans, for people, why even get up in the morning? And I think we're going to go through that phase very soon in crypto. And Hemi, obviously, I think is going to play a big role in that. That'll onboard a lot more average folks onto crypto. BTC, I often say BTC and stablecoins are our current two killer apps across the crypto industry. And I think this next phase we're going to go through is opening up a number of killer apps for, again, average users, which is why I get up in the morning. It's not for crypto whales. It's to enable freedom and self-sovereignty across as many billions of people on the planet as possible. And Hemi is doing that. Crypto is doing that. Bitcoin and Ethereum are doing that. And we're absolutely marching in that positive direction.
Thanks for that, Jeff. That's really like an inspiring note to almost end on. And I completely agree with your kind of, your take on it. That we see there's so many kind of applications that are focused on one chain. You see a chain specializing so much on one vertical, be it gaming or healthcare or, DeFi, obviously. And companies and apps, they have this sunken cost fallacy. It's very unlikely they're going to move, even if it would be beneficial to them, to another chain. So more and more we're seeing there is a desperate need for layer twos like Hemi. So it's really exciting. I think, hopefully will go very well. I've got the white paper up, so I'm definitely going to read into it after this. But I hope it, and probably think it will be one of those 1%ers, but that's not financial advice for anyone who's listening. So like I say, we're coming to the end. We ask all of our guests 2 questions at the end of the show because we like to see how their answers vary across time and across industries. The first one, and I'm very excited to hear your answer on this one, is in one sentence, and I want to emphasize the one sentence part. What is Web3 to you?
Well, I joke a lot on Twitter about I've already moved on to Web 8, Web 32, and Web 64. Web 3 to me is really that user experience that I just talked about. Web 3 is a unified user experience where you can open your wallet and have full self-sovereign, free as in freedom access to moving, transposing, depositing, withdrawing digital asset services across the entire web. It's about the integration of the Web 2 world plus crypto equals awesome.
I like that. Web 2 plus crypto equals awesome. That would have been the perfect one-liner. I might title this episode that. Okay, the second question, and this is I'm excited for this one, is if you were having a dinner party, and I imagine there would be a champagne waterfall there because you've said it so many times, and you could choose anyone on the planet throughout history or even fictional to discuss crypto, Web3, all these concepts with, who would it be and why?
I'm a history buff, and so my list of folks that I would want to talk to would have absolutely nothing to do with crypto. It would be asking Henry VIII about the Tudor times, asking the Churchill about World War II, and asking Genghis Khan about the Mongol hordes. Crypto is so advanced that I don't know that it would be easy even to talk about that with a historical figure. I don't know.
I think they'd understand, even those people you just mentioned, they'd understand the concept of governance. I don't know how on board they would be on the idea of community governance because a lot of them were kind of quite central points to control the entire society. But I get what you mean. It would be hard to give them a 1 hour up to date on what is crypto.
But I think they would vibe on decentralization. I'm sure you could talk to historical figures about decentralization, eliminating single points of failure. All that would definitely, I think, ring with Genghis Khan or Hannibal or any of the great generals.
Yeah. Well, I can see why you might find it hard to think of a name, Jeff, because you're probably on that list for a lot of other people to talk to about Bitcoin and Web3. So yeah, thanks for giving it a go for us. But Jeff, this has been such a great episode. Thank you so much for spending an hour of your time for this conversation. And we'll wish you the best of luck for Hemi. I hope we'll maybe check in the future and see how things are going. And to everyone listening at home, thank you very much for joining us for this episode. You can join us next time to untangle a little more Web3.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Untangling Web3.
Don't forget to send us your thoughts, questions, and comments on social media. And be sure to follow us on your favourite podcast provider to catch the next episode. See you next time to untangle a little bit more of Web3.
The views we express here are our own and do not reflect the views of our employers.